I'm Andrew Henderson, nomadcapitalist.com. This is the Nomad Capitalist Report. Looking for liberty beyond borders. It's the reason for internationalizing your life, your assets, your freedom, seeking greater freedoms by diversifying geographically. We're talking to the Stateless Man, his website, thestatelessman.com. He talks about how to live internationally, find financial independence, personal sovereignty, many of the same principles of a nomad capitalist. Fergus is with us now. Fergus, thanks for joining us. We have talked a lot on nomadcapitalist.com about the idea of this feudal lord-serf relationship that we have with our countries, where they own our passport, they really own our citizenship. We depend on them for our ability to go out in the world and escape them. It's a very circular logic.
Right. Well, thanks for having me on, Andrew. It is, and it really, once you see the world for what it is and see government officials or people who profit from them for the reality and not the rhetoric, it's very hard to go back. And so, yes, one of the grossest examples of how there is discriminatory treatment based upon whether you are or are not within these certain governmental clubs are the existence of people who don't have a government or are stateless completely, and they have terrible difficulties doing anything in life. Really, they can't open bank accounts, they can't travel, like they have a difficult time getting a job. So it really shows you could say the reality of government bureaucracy and how it does discriminate. And the claims that these people have, they serve your interests rather than their own, are just don't carry any truth to them.
So the Stateless Man, you talk about on your website, helping people find, as we do, this individual liberty, talking about arbitrary borders. That's your big issue. You really believe, I talk about the squiggly lines on a map. What are they? It's a culture. But talk about your view on that. Yeah,
well, growing up in New Zealand, we didn't actually have borders, right? We're just an island nation. So I guess the idea of borders was never really so clear in my mind. But in the United States, where I first came to college, it's much more pronounced, this need for borders and fences, and I didn't really get it. And I guess perhaps my instinct has always been that the default position of any of our activity should be that on the side of freedom. That's to say that unless you're doing something, you've got to justify stopping someone from doing something rather than the other way around, that they have to justify their reason for doing something. And I've never really understood the problem with traveling beyond borders. And when I've looked into it more closely, I've realized that basically the whole idea of borders is a myth. It's a fallacy, basically, because these borders that people proclaim as some kind of sacred institution or whatever they want to refer to it as, they're just ridiculous because, firstly, they move. Secondly, they have all sorts of different forms of borders, right? So some are open, some are closed, some have different rules, and it's all just very arbitrary. And I'm astounded that people put so much weight or concern into them when they had absolutely no say in where these borders went. That these borders have no real basis for why these borders are in the places they are. I think it's really a form of indoctrination or subjugation of people to build their allegiance towards something like that. And like I said, I don't relate to it. And the problem is too that I just think it's a big lose-lose. People are wasting their time and money defending these arbitrary lines. And for what good? No good. It's extremely destructive to people who want to travel across them. It promotes human trafficking, and it's very expensive. So I think that's just a very, like I said, destructive and just useless way of looking at the world. And I like to believe that we're entering an era of, you could say, a heightened consciousness when people actually realize the truth, and that these, you could say, patriotic myths about borders are becoming more transparently clear. Now, in terms of your own life, though, you have to realize that the borders, insofar as people acting upon them and getting in your way, they do exist. That there are people who will stop you, and you've got to accept that reality. I'm not about some kind of sacrificial crusade to put yourself at the whims of government officials. I'm promoting how to work around that or overcome that to find freedom, because I'm not about I mean, I support, you could say, political change or different policies, but I'm not about some sort of sacrificial crusade or movement towards that direction, because that confuses the whole point. The whole point is that we want to be free of people, not that we want to be political activists our whole lives. I don't want to do that, and I suspect you don't either.
Yeah, we talked on the website, and people commented on this about why not to stay and fight. You're absolutely right. This idea that we're going to fight for a culture that has rejected that which we want. There are places where you can go find what you want somewhere else. But I think what's interesting, you talk about government propaganda, which is basically the whole purpose of government is to convince you of what it is trying to do. You look at a place like the United States, the land of the free, where you think that the borders are there to protect you, but they're really there, as in every case, to keep you in. Look at what's happened with passports just over the last 100 years since the League of Nations. It used to be we could go wherever we wanted. Now we're so much more civilized because we make demands of people and restrict their freedom of movement and tell people, hey, we don't want you to leave, or hey, we can shut down your passport, or hey, here's how we can control you.
Right. And I guess the problem is that most people, for whatever reason, don't have such an adventurous outlook on life, right? So if you just want to stay in your home state or hometown or wherever the whole life and maybe, travel 100 miles away, this doesn't really affect you. It's a very easy imposition to impose on others, right? Just to say, well, we don't like foreigners, whatever it may be, and we're going to put this barrier. Many of us, like you and me, we want to go exploring. I might just want to go and live in Peru for a year, right? I don't want to have to go and beg to some official, pay him money, go and visit him, and then have him assess my whole background. I just want to do it. And it's the most harmless thing ever, just to travel. Who is hurt by you moving? And one example of this was, I think, a pair of U.S. guys who went to Russia, and they went through the paperwork and tried to get some kind of visa to stay there for about a year. They wanted to bicycle across the entire country. And even though the visas weren't allowed, basically the bureaucrats at hand just said, we're going to just look to the way at this one and let you do it. But in the end, they got deported anyway. And I just thought, I just don't get it. What is the point? And like you say, in my view, it must be that the people in political power are concerned about this form of accountability. They see you as a member of their herd, and they, we've invested in you, and, we want to get our return. Their tax returns or loyalty or obedience. And I don't think they like the idea that people like us just say, actually, no thanks.
I don't owe you anything. And if I want to leave, I'm going to leave. Of course, the United States, there's no such thing. Your non-choice to be born on their patch of dirt means you're going to be paying them till the rest of your life unless you pay their $450 extortion fee to say, I'm no longer one of you. I don't buy into your system.
Right. Yeah, and the recent experience, I'm sure you followed this closely, of one of the Facebook co-founders, Eduardo Saverin, I think his name was,
right,
who moved to Singapore. Just so revealing about the mindset of people in political power, that they were just shocked that someone would say, actually, I don't need you, and I don't want to be involved with you. And rather than saying, well, why don't we offer you a better deal, like actual, genuine suppliers or businesses do say, well, we want to keep your custom and we'll offer you a good deal and we'll outcompete other people. No, let's just say all these bad words about you and attack your character and say, well, we're going to try and hurt you in the future. I mean, what kind of behavior is that? It's like children.
No, look, this is what they do. Government is like, for anyone who goes and gambles, government is like the reverse casino. You're Eduardo Saverin. You give them hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're like, screw you, right. How dare you leave? Meanwhile, the guy who, pays negative $1,000, please, let's give you a suite and all the accoutrements of success. But Eduardo Saverin, not even from the United States. People don't even realize the guy was born in Brazil. He came here. He built something. Now he's going somewhere else. And it's like the bad 21-year-old boyfriend who you broke up with. And he says, oh, you must have broke up with me because I was too exciting or too good looking, or you just couldn't handle it. No, it's because you're a bad boyfriend.
Right. Yeah.
It's a shame what people do to demonize success. And I think for people like you that study history, it's got to be a shot in the arm to realize things are in decline.
Yes, definitely so. And the sad part about it to me, though, is that I don't see any havens to flee to, right? So just like you, I'm on this quest to find freedom in my life, and I've been traveling the world seeking that. And there really aren't, I mean, you might dispute this, but I don't see any havens, right? I grew up in New Zealand, which, except for Hong Kong and Singapore, which are basically city-states or island nations, New Zealand is one of the freest places around. And I can tell you that it's in my view, that just scares me to come to grips with the fact that New Zealand is one of the freest places on earth, because I don't see it that way at all. And the culture is not pro-freedom. You know, people in the United States would find it very hostile, actually, to many aspects of freedom that they hold dear, such as gun ownership. Don't think you're going to be, getting any semi-automatic rifles or anything like that in military. I mean, just any sort of guns that would be of any high caliber without any serious licensing that you would be able to get here in the United States. I mean, there's simply buying guns without licenses legally that doesn't occur in New Zealand.
Yeah, that's we're all looking for that place, and I think by diversifying you can find the right place. But certainly, very valid point. Freedom not in vogue in many places. Fergus Hodgson, he runs thestatelessman.com. It's a blog that we recommend, right on target with our readers. Hey, thanks for joining.